Hello and welcome back to Scotty Holiday 2. My name is Scotty Holiday. I am a queer content creator and a huge Star Wars nerd, so if that's something you're into, please consider subscribing to my channel. Today I'm excited to be back with part 2 of my series talking about Star Wars and Princess Mononoke. In part 1, I discussed the influence and similarities between the film Princess Mononoke and the Mandalorian Season 2 episode, The Jedi. If you haven't seen that video already, I've put a link in the description and in the card so you can check it out. In this video, I want to talk about how Princess Mononoke and the character San specifically inspired the character of Ahsoka Tano. Before we get started, please make sure to like the video and let me know in the comments below what your favorite Studio Ghibli film is. Now, let's get into the video. Ahsoka Tano went through many iterations before she was first introduced in 2008's Star Wars The Clone Wars film and TV series. In the beginning, George Lucas wanted to give Anakin Skywalker a Padawan to help show his growth from Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones and Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. He settled on a female character to help appeal to young girls, but what he didn't realize is how much this character would appeal to people of all genders in the Star Wars fandom. Over the years, Ahsoka has become a Star Wars character fan favorite, and you could even say the fan favorite of the queer Star Wars community, myself included. At Star Wars Celebration Europe in 2016, Dave Filoni stated that the character of Ahsoka was directly inspired by Princess Mononoke, and specifically the character San.
It's just every now and then I draw Ahsoka riding a wolf, because who wouldn't want to?
Wolf walker? Is that what that is?
And, well, the whole thing was that Ahsoka's inspiration came from Mononoke, from the character San, so I was like, riding a wolf is so cool. And I did have a scene, so the clones chased her in this forest, right? And I forget which one it was. We'll make up a name, anybody. And Collins chases them into the forest, Commander Collins. And they're running in there, and they're trying to find Ahsoka. And they come to this clearing, and there's a stone, a big stone in the clearing. And Ahsoka's sitting there on this rock, just kind of meditating, just all peaceful and calm. And the clones all get their guns out, and they're like, come on, you have to come with us. And she's like, you'll have to ask my friends first. And they're kind of like, what does that mean? And all of a sudden, there's this shuddering in the trees, and these big heads of these wolves come down. And the clones didn't realize that what they ran into weren't a bunch of trees, but was a bunch of these giant wolves that have legs like trees. And the clones are like, oh my gosh, these wolves are like, ah. And then you're up on one riding, and the clones are like, this is horrible. And there's blasting, all kinds of special effects, and you're running off on these wolves. Oh, it was great.
That's amazing.
So, really fun.
This is about as far as we got.
But that was as far as I got. Yeah.
During her 3-year design process for the Clone Wars and beyond, these influences can clearly be seen in her clothing, facial markings, and even in her fighting style. In the beginning, while she was still known as Ashla, Ahsoka had a very different look to what we eventually saw in the Clone Wars film. In her early concept art, she's mostly depicted wearing a tube top, armbands, a long flowy skirt, and boots. She also had 2 white rectangular markings on her forehead and larger white areas around her eyes with a downward pointed section on her cheeks going towards her jaw. In Princess Mononoke, San is seen wearing a long headdress and mask, an apron-like top, a dress with a long flowy skirt, bands on each arm, and boots. She also has red markings on her face, a triangle on her forehead, and downward pointed markings that go from under her eyes towards her jaw. Right away, we can clearly see the similarities in the design between the Ashla concept art and the design of San. The most obvious similarities, in my opinion, are the facial markings and skirt. Once the Clone Wars film premiered, the character, now known as Ahsoka, ended up in a shorter skirt with leggings and a bandeau. But we're not here to talk about that outfit. Thankfully, Ahsoka got a redesign for the Clone Wars Season 3, trading the short skirt and bandeau for a full-on dress, taking the Princess Mononoke influence a step further. Ahsoka keeps this similar style in her appearance in Star Wars Rebels, where we see her in a gray dress with armor. In her most recent animation appearance, Dave Filoni goes even closer to San, putting Ahsoka in an all-blue dress and armor during the Siege of Mandalore in the Clone Wars Season 7. Looking at Ahsoka's fighting style, we can also see influences from Princess Mononoke. In the film, San is very agile and acrobatic with her movements in battle. During her infiltration of Irontown, we see her running up walls and leaping into the air and between rooftops. She's also seen wielding a spear and dagger, using a regular and reverse grip interchangeably. San also seems to favor crouching stances in combat as well. In comparison, Ahsoka is also very agile and acrobatic in battle. While she has the Force to aid her, Ahsoka is no stranger to flipping, somersaulting, and leaping. She starts out wielding a single lightsaber, but eventually adopts dual wielding with a shorter Shoto lightsaber as well. Ahsoka favors crouching poses and reverse grip during the Clone Wars, but eventually switches between a regular and reverse grip interchangeably as she gets older. Moving past their appearances, I wanted to talk about the similarities of San and Ahsoka as characters. While they're both obviously female warriors, Ahsoka during the Clone Wars and San also have many similar personality traits. They're both strong-willed, confident, and impulsive, but also loyal, brave, and compassionate towards others. They even have similarities in their backstories. For those who don't know, Ahsoka was discovered at the age of 3 on the Torgruta homeworld of Sheely by Jedi Master Plo Koon. She was then taken to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, where she was raised and trained as a Jedi. In Princess Mononoke, we learned that while San was still a baby, her parents were attacked by the wolf god Moro for damaging the cedar forest. In an attempt to distract Moro, they threw San at her feet and fled. From then on, Moro chose to raise San as her own, and because of this, San chooses to reject her own humanity. Both San and Ahsoka were removed from their biological families at a very young age and raised as warriors through spirituality, the Jedi, and the Forest gods. At the end of Princess Mononoke, and as Ahsoka's story progresses past the Clone Wars series, both characters end up choosing their own path. San chooses to acknowledge her humanity while staying in touch with the Forest gods, and Ahsoka chooses to leave the Jedi while continuing on as a Force user. At one point during Princess Mononoke, Lady Eboshi, the film's antagonist, describes San as Princess of Spirits, of ghouls, beasts, and ancient gods. Similarly, you could argue that Ahsoka is one of the last true Jedi of an ancient religion, as it's put in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. From the very beginning concept art to her live-action debut in The Mandalorian Season 2, Dave Filoni has clearly continued using San from Princess Mononoke as an influence for the character of Ahsoka Tano. On top of admitting to the influence of Princess Mononoke, the similarities in appearance, fighting style, and overall character story are undeniable between San and Ahsoka. I love seeing the progression of Ahsoka's story from her introduction in the Clone Wars to Star Wars Rebels and The Mandalorian, while continuing to notice the influence of Princess Mononoke carry throughout. I am so excited to see more of Ahsoka's story in Tales of the Jedi this fall and what lies ahead in the Ahsoka series next year. Do you think Dave Filoni will continue to draw on Princess Mononoke and San for Ahsoka's story going forward? Do you think we'll see any similarities between the two in Tales of the Jedi? Let me know in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter so we can chat about it. Please make sure to like the video and consider subscribing to my channel for more content. Keep an eye out for part 3 coming soon. You're definitely not going to want to miss it, so make sure you're subscribed. To keep up with my latest updates, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. The links are in the description below. Thank you as always for watching, and may the Force be with you.